prosecutors being willing to prosecute these kinds of cases?
One impact is prosecutors seeing that juries, who are supposed to be a kind of a check in the system, however imperfect, juries are willing to hear this kind of evidence, to understand what the prosecutor himself called a complicated fact pattern, and still figure out what happened in that instance, and not just impugning witnesses or accusers who become victims when their testimony is found credible, but really taking it all and moving forward. That's number one. Number two, Harvey Weinstein's guilty today. He's in jail today. He's awaiting sentencing today. Could be 5 years or more. That is a huge seismic shift because he is not your average or random individual. Everyone understands he is both a powerful individual who fought hard, who attacked these people, and the case that started it all. And so the law is a lot of times about stories. Everyone knows the story started with him, and now his story includes going to jail today, going to prison for this, and awaiting those further charges.
Well, let me ask you about those further charges, because how will that work? I mean, will he physically go to the West Coast? When might that happen? So what's the progress that happens after this?
California was waiting on this case to be resolved for trial, but of course they have those charges filed. Typically, defendants have a right to be present to face accusers, even if they're being held in a different system. But we would expect after sentencing, even as this appeals process moves forward in New York, that California can pick it up.
All right. Well, Aaron Melber, thank you so much.
You.
We're looking forward to your show tonight, as we always are, but in particular. So, Cynthia Oxney, the other part of this, what would it mean to the legal system, to prosecutors? Obviously, what would it mean to the Me Too movement? There was a lot of nervousness that I heard from folks about if there were no guilty verdicts, would that set the movement back? But now you have two verdicts, and I thought you had a very powerful statement by Cy Vance about what the message is, that what rape is very much more broadly defined, what sexual assault is, what jurors will look at. What do you see as the impact on women who have been, or sadly in the future will be, sexually assaulted or raped?
Well, I think this is a huge win for the prosecution, and it's a huge win for rape victims everywhere, because what it says to them is, we can believe you. Jurors will believe you. And that's been sort of the underlying worry of rape victims forever, which is, I don't want to come forward and go through this grueling process and in the end be slapped in the face with a not guilty. And what this does is it emboldens them, like, it's okay. Not only are we behind you as prosecutors, but juries are behind you too. It's very important. And for all the attacks by the defense on Annabella Sciorra, let me just say, it isn't that they didn't, you don't know. We don't know that they didn't believe her. What we know is they didn't believe that the case was proved beyond a reasonable doubt that the enhancement should happen. They may very well have used her testimony to make a decision on the pattern and practice of Harvey Weinstein, which assisted in the convictions on the other two women, which would have been acceptable. So I push back as the defense attorneys and people start to scream, nobody believed her, nobody believed her. Not true. And you can't begin to explain how difficult this case was from the point of the prosecution. I also was very nervous about it. And it's a huge win for the prosecution and for crime victims everywhere.
I've just been handed some new information, so we're going to kind of take a turn here, see if you're comfortable commenting on this. But as we wait, and we have a picture up on our screen that we are waiting for the Bryant Memorial to get underway at Staples Center, there is a 72-page wrongful death lawsuit that has been filed in Los Angeles Superior Court by attorneys for Vanessa Bryant, seeking unspecified damages stemming from the crash. They allege that Island Express and agents and employees had a duty to use a degree of care that an ordinarily careful and prudent pilot would use under the same or similar circumstances. Any surprise in that?
There's a lot of surprise in that, because I understand that this pilot had some issues in the past for being a bit of a cowboy. So no, it doesn't surprise me at all.
We are going to go to that memorial service as soon as it begins. Cynthia Oxney, thank you so much for that. Ron Allen as well, at the courthouse for the Weinstein verdicts. We have yet more breaking news today. The number of coronavirus cases in the U.S. is going up.
Before they get on these other issues, I would like to weigh in on the rape case. 2 thumbs up to the prosecutors that went forward in going through with this case, because there has been so many unintentional circumstances that has occurred during the affairs of a man and a woman pertaining to them being raped, or a man and a man, or a woman and a woman. It doesn't have to be a man and a woman anymore. There has been so many occurrences that has taken place based upon one's testimony. This is a monumental moment for prosecutors, and 2 thumbs up for them doing this, based around believing someone's testimony. I weigh into this because I'm going to use this as an analogy towards what has occurred in my particular life, in no one believing in my testimony, as far as all the close encounters of death and all the different occurrences that has happened in my life, close scrapes with law enforcement agencies all over America, and having these supernatural events that has occurred in representing end-time biblical Bible prophecy. I'm wanting to bring this out and use this as an example of how come society rather believe a lie than they would the truth. Well, it goes right back to the same characteristics to over 2,000 years ago. See, we think that we have become shiny objects in the eyes of the glorious God, to the point that we are a lot better society today than what they was 2,000 years ago. But if the truth be known, we have only changed very, very little. We still hold the same type of characteristics as what they did back then. And the reason why I say this is because Jesus himself was proclaiming his testimony to the world. And what did they do to his testimony? They refused it. They retaliated against it. They ignored it. They rebuked it. They turned from it. They actually was not just a group of people that was ungrateful, but a group of people that done just the very opposite in what that they was experiencing and seeing and being a part of at the time whenever Jesus was walking and talking up onto the land, that they should have been extraordinarily grateful by seeing all these miracles take place and seeing the blind healed and this happen and that happen but instead they acted just the very opposite. How many testimonies do we hear of today, not just with Jesus, not just with myself, but in other testimonies, just like the one that's going on right now of the rape case? How many cases do we hear of to where it was thrown out of court because it was insufficient evidence? In other words, the people the jury just did not believe, the messenger. For whatever reason, they just didn't believe the messenger with the message that they was that they was bringing forth, and basically the right type of people dismissed it as it being either a lie or fictitious. How many times have we seen this happen again and again and again? Not just in the case with rapes, but in the case with violence, in the case with murders, in the case with robberies. How many times have we seen this again and again and again? And you hate to think of a society that has to basically put a security camera on every corner, on every room. You basically got to walk around with one on your head, one around your waist, one on your belt, one in behind your back. You got to put security cameras now, dash cameras, on your automobile, because so many people lie and they don't tell the truth about who was actually at fault pertaining to an accident. You hate to you hate to use the analogy of a social, secure society that's based around security cameras. But if we did not have this type of technology, God only knows what our society would eventually elevate off to the point of the wicked getting away with just basically cold-blooded murder. So thank God for the 21st century technology pertaining to digital cameras and etc. And I say that soft pedaling because I realize that one of those cameras could very well be pointing at me. And the reason why that I'm bringing this out the way that I'm bringing this out is because yesterday I went to church. I'm not even going to mention now where it was. But today the minister of that church cornered me and said, "Hey, buddy, I never gave you permission to put your message out on YouTube, that message out on YouTube." And I had to back up and I told the minister, I go, "Sir, first of all, I did ask for permission from, I thought, one of your deacons, the guy with the long white hair, with the ponytail." I go, "I did ask for permission of being able to view what I was witnessing in a public setting." I go, "Also, whenever you see somebody pointing a camera at you while you're up there talking," I go, "you can't deny that I was documenting you. I was not only documenting you, but whenever I went up there to sing yesterday about the cross, you told me as I was walking back to my seat, well, don't forget your camera," because I had my camera propped against the first pew up looking at, I guess it was probably looking at the wall or looking at the ceiling. I don't know. It may have been looking at the banisters and behind the pulpit or something. I don't know what it was actually viewing, but he come to my attention that, "Hey, I didn't realize that you was going to put this on YouTube." My ideology about that is, if what an individual is doing, especially out in the eyes of a public setting, it doesn't matter if it's a city hall, doesn't matter if it's a courthouse, doesn't matter if it's a church house, as long as it's not an outhouse pertaining to the bathroom, and as long as it's not invading people's actual privacy inside their homes. If what you're doing out in the eyes of society is so embarrassing or so disruptive that you don't want it told to the general public, odds are you probably shouldn't be doing it to begin with. It doesn't matter if you're trying to preach a sermon or you're working down here in a topless place trying to make some extra money because you want to go to college. If what you're doing is so radical and so embarrassing that you don't want it to be displayed to the rest of the world, odds are you probably shouldn't be doing it anyway, especially if what you're doing is, in fact, in a public setting. I think that's the part that the vast majority of the people here in this area, in this particular area, don't realize. Now, they do in Korea, they do in China, they do in other parts of the world, Europe, Canada. They understand that those cameras can be used. You can weaponize those cameras and use them basically as a weapon. Now, there is perimeters that we should abide by. There is principles that we should abide by. But that's one reason why that this rampant, unjust sin has been so hard to identify, is because there was no Second third, fourth witnesses. There was no videotape or no data recording of that particular incident that happened with a female being raped or a male being raped, because it can be just as easily towards one as it is the other. And my point that I'm trying to make in all this is 2 thumbs up to the verdict and 2 thumbs up to the 21st century technology to be able to defy the difference between the truth and a lie more so today than what we ever have been. And it's kind of like going back to science in regard to DNA of a murder or even a rape. You know, if a girl says that she's been raped, first thing she needs to do is go down to the emergency room and take specimens from her body. That way, once they find the perpetrator, they can put 2 and 2 together pertaining to DNA. And a lot of times that's where they get caught, is that the DNA matches. We got science now that helps enhance these criminals that's out here doing what they're doing, thinking that they can do it and get away with it. And it's not the first time, it's not the second time, and I'm sure it won't be the last time towards somebody thinking that they can do something to an individual's rights, towards taking advantage of a female or a male, and thinking that they're going to be able to get away with it. That's one reason why so many people has gotten upset at me since I've come back here, is because I have used data technology. I have weaponized it in the sense of being able to document various testimonies and various things that I have went through, and people don't like it. Why don't they like it? Because it's bringing transparency to the truth. And the majority of the people, I'm going to say not all of them, but the majority of them in today's society, I'm going to say probably 75% of them, they don't like the truth. They don't want the truth to be told about their lifestyle and about what they've done and where they've been and what they haven't done. You know why? Because they're bogus. They're shysters. They're not true to themselves, much less true to those around them. In other words, they're inadequate. And that's the way that they have lived their lives, is in inadequate form. And because they've lived their lives in an inadequate form, they don't want the rest of the world to know about their shame and their corruption and their dirtiness. And that's the very opposite of what Jesus taught, because Jesus said that the truth would set you free. What is the truth? Is the truth something that you manufacture in your own mind to say that this is what happened, knowing good and well that it didn't happen? No, that's not the truth. That's a perverted truth, which turns into a lie. That's a distorted truth, which is nothing more than a lie. And it's time that the world woke up to these distorted truths in recognizing that they're nothing more than lies. And the people that need to be convicted of the crimes that they're committing, regardless whether it be rape, incest, robbery, theftery, murder, or whatever, they need to be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. To the fullest extent of the law. I don't care if you work for the law. I don't care if you are a judge or you are a federal prosecutor or a regular prosecutor or you're a politician or a preacher or whatever. If what you're doing does not deserve to be held out in the eyes of the general public, knowing that you're doing what you're doing in a public setting, something is not lining up right. Something. I don't know what it is. But around here, I got almost stoned to death because I was using modern day technology in documenting some, not all, but some of these places that I went into towards their services. And because of it, it speaks volumes about the people that are rearing up, working in a public setting, but wanting to be treated as if they're in a private setting. Once more, if you're in a private setting, You have all the right to your privacy, pertaining to your identity, pertaining to your face, pertaining to what you're engaged in. If you're working in a private, I'm just going to use this analogy. If you're working in a private nightclub and it says on the door, no cameras allowed, you better not go in that nightclub with cameras. If you go into a Hell's Angels nightclub or a Hell's Angels rallying place and it says no cameras allowed, you better not go in there with any cameras, because there's going to be consequences. And I guess the same thing could basically be practiced in a church of no cameras, but it speaks volumes about that particular church if they're not going to allow any cameras, because it makes one wonder, well, my God, this is supposed to be a church. They're supposed to be up front. They're supposed to be honest. They're supposed to be working above the board, not below the board. How come I can't go in there with a camera and document what's going on? It makes people wonder of the illegitimacies that's happening in behind that church building, because a church building is supposed to be viewed as a public setting, the same way as a city hall or a courthouse or a parking lot. Are you on the road? You're in a public setting. And I think that's one of the problems around here, is that people think, no, people don't know the difference between a private setting and a public setting. That's one of the calamities that I've run into since I've come back here by using either GoPro, Facebook, or YouTube. And it really speaks volumes about society over here in America. It speaks volumes about society no matter where you're at. It don't matter if you're in America or Russia, Canada, Australia, Europe, the islands, wherever. Let's listen to this, because this is very serious, pertaining to the coronavirus that is now exceeding levels of understanding of how that it's spreading and getting dire. Please listen.
Number of coronavirus cases in the U.S. is going up. The CDC says 5 people from the cruise ship quarantined in Japan have tested positive. The passengers are currently under quarantine at Joint Base.
Now you see what they're doing right there? They're brushing out that person's face. You know why they're doing that? It's not that they should be doing that, but to hold down any type of controversy pertaining to MSNBC, rather than showing that individual on a private vessel that could be deemed as violating his privacy because he's on a private vessel, they have decided to discard his face and blur it out. Now, if that same individual was out here on the streets, in the public, if he was out here on a public walkway, or he was in a parking lot, especially a public parking lot, it wouldn't matter if MSNBC blotted out his face or not. But because he's on a private vessel that can be looked upon as being the same thing as your home or a private club, rather than have a bunch of controversy, because that individual that they're filming right now could care less. A matter of fact, he may be glorifying in the fact that they was willing to put him on MSNBC. But then again, that same individual may rear up about him being put on MSNBC. This is a newscasting agency, and because it's a newscasting agency, they're going to take all the preventive measures of trying to withhold or withheld any type of controversy that could possibly cause controversy in the future in regards to privacy rights. And because of it, they blur it out. They blur it out. As I said before, If the individual wasn't on a private vessel, it would be different. But once more, you're talking about a newscasting agency that probably touches 60, maybe 75 million people here in America, not counting the people that it gets broadcasted to in various places of the world. So because they have a big mic, because they have a big viewing audience, there's more restricted rules upon what they do versus somebody out here that decides to get somebody on their background pertaining to their personal YouTube platform or on their Facebook platform or Twitter platform. Now, if you was taking that person and celebrating their name in some sort of way, like taking their picture and putting it on a cereal box and using it for profits, then that's a big no-no without their permission. That's a big no-no. You can't do that. Adult or minor. More so with the minors than it is the adults, but you can't do that, period. You can't solicit somebody's face or somebody's name basically without their permission.
San Antonio Lackland in Texas. The CDC says it expects more people from this group to test positive. Meantime, the World Health Organization is warning that the world is not ready for a major outbreak of coronavirus, as Italy, South Korea, and Japan have all seen a dramatic increase in cases, more than 200 in Italy alone. And
look at that. Tell me that ain't going in leaps and bounds. From this point, from that point, it's probably 2,500 miles, and from that point to that point, it's probably another right at 800 miles. Tell me something ain't going on here. From that point to this point to that point. And that's on this side of the continent.
By the way, one of those South Korea cases is the family member of a U.S. soldier who is also an American citizen. The risk level for the military community there has now been raised to high, officials say, as a prudent measure to protect the force. The virus has killed 12 people in Iran, the largest number of deaths outside.
Now see these people right here? Got him. Got him. You know why? He's in a public dwelling area. He's on the streets. Or not on the streets, but on a walkway. He's in the public. That's your difference. Once you get out in the public, you can be viewed by anything and anybody.
China. Officials.
People sitting there playing a guitar. Sitting there beside the man playing the guitar. He's being viewed. He's in the public.
There fear there's a large number of people infected who have.
There's a woman there beating, or somebody there beating a drum. They're in the view.
Not yet been diagnosed. Joining me now from Milan, Italy, is NBC News foreign correspondent
Let's
Molly
pay
Hunter.
attention to
Molly,
this.
I heard you tell a fascinating story earlier today when you were flying to Milan that there are people who actually wanted to get off the plane. All of this is moving so quickly that it's making tremendous numbers of people in Italy and elsewhere very nervous.
Chris, and that's the headline, is that there are a lot of really nervous people in Italy. The new front for the coronavirus fight, really the first outbreak, of course, outside of Asia, and more than 200 cases. And officials here have told us it doesn't mean necessarily 200 new people got sick over the weekend, but they've certainly started testing more people, been expanding their test radius. So that number shot up. And over the weekend, the prime minister said they were taking dramatic measures now, and they were going to start closing schools, quarantining towns, shutting down churches, religious gatherings, places, of course, where lots of people would get together. But Chris, that story that I talked about earlier really just goes to illustrate the nervousness. So we were flying from London Heathrow to Milan earlier today. We pulled away from the gate and really 3 people kind of raised their hands and said they were no longer comfortable flying to Italy. So the captain got on the loudspeaker, said we were going back to the gate, and said, look, he wasn't going to give anyone advice, but of course, if anyone wanted to get off, they could. And 3 people did, of course, get off. Not that many people were wearing masks on the plane, Chris, but when we landed in Milan, some of us got our temperatures taken, some of us didn't, but no one asked about my previous travel history. As you know, I've been covering the coronavirus for the last few weeks. I've been to Asia. No one asked if I'd been to Hong Kong or Japan. Walked right through without issue. And in downtown Milan, some people are wearing masks, and I think that's going to change in the next couple of days, Chris, if we see these cases go up.
Yeah, I was saying earlier today that when I was covering the Ebola outbreak, when I came back to the United States and I was supposed to go on a presidential trip, I was not able to do that because they were not allowing people who had been in the Ebola affected countries to travel. And so we're going to see whether or not those kinds of precautions start to be put into place. But I'm curious about the plane you were on this morning. I mean, were people on their phones and just finding out that there was this problem in Italy, or why suddenly after the plane had pulled out of the gate did those 3 people decide to get off? Do we know?
We have no idea. And there were 3 people. I think one of those people had decided earlier 2 additional people got up to join that passenger, and all 3 got off. But it's just about this kind of mob mentality, this nervousness, right? As soon as one person says they're nervous, as soon as one person is coughing, I saw this in Japan, I saw this in Hong Kong as well. We're actually right outside the big Milan train station, Chris, and the biggest worry here, of course, in Europe is, can the Italian authorities contain the outbreak and the nervousness really to northern Italy? Of course, there are trains that go not only all over the country, but all over Europe. You don't need visas, of course, to go to France, to Switzerland, to, you know, all of these countries in the European bloc. Open borders are central to how this European bloc works, and whether or not they're going to be able to monitor everyone who gets on every train or plane, it remains to be seen. So yes, there are more than 200 cases in northern Italy right now, 50,000 people under lockdown. We'll have to see if those numbers go up in the next couple of days.
Molly Hunter, take good care. We do appreciate your reporting. Thank you so much. Well, the
That's scary. That is freaking scary.
spread of the virus outside of China, these fresh outbreaks we were just reporting, have devastated Asian and European markets today. And now in the U.S., take a look. Wall Street is following suit. Stocks are down right now more than 1,000 points, coming up toward 1,100. Joining me now, CNBC's senior market correspondent, Dom Chu. Dom, what is going on with...
Jesus, did it go down that much the day after 9/11? I don't know. That's a lot. Wow.
This latest sell-off, who is involved in this, which kinds of companies, and is there an expectation it's going to continue?
So there's an expectation right now that we'll have uncertainty going forward. And a lot of that has to stem with what Molly just talked about, this nervousness that's coming out of this coronavirus outbreak. You mentioned the countries that are now affected outside of just mainland China. That is what's being called by many traders the real cause of what's happening today. Because what you have is...
But you have to ask yourself a question. Is this a credible cause for the markets to get jittery? Or is this just a reason that the markets can start pulling the cream off the top and taking advantage of those with 401ks? You got to ask yourself the question, is this a credible endangerment to the markets to the point that what they're doing is justifiable? Or is this just giving a bunch of people a green light and saying, wow, now's the time to get the cream off the top. Run for it. And basically seeing people running in panic towards trying to get the best bang for the buck before the purse becomes smaller and smaller. We're living in very uncertain times right now that the Bible describes is going to happen in the last days.
South Korea now with more than 800 confirmed cases. That is important because that means that South Korea now has the most confirmed cases of coronavirus outside of China. You mentioned Italy, Molly did there. That's important because with Italy, with over 200 cases, it is now causing a number of quarantines to be locally specific to areas in northern Italy. Why is that important? Because that part of northern Italy accounts for almost a third of the gross domestic product or economic output of Italy. Another issue is that free travel that goes around Europe. All of that doesn't help to contain what's seen as the virus outbreak. So the markets are then reacting to what's happening there. As for the companies Christian mentioned that are the most affected right now, the ones in the travel and leisure business are taking it very hard. We're talking about airlines like American Airlines, United Continental here in the United States, also cruise operators like Norwegian and Carnival Cruise Lines, all of those, and hotel operators as well, some of the epicenters for trading right now. So we'll see if that sticks around. But as for how long it's going to last, it's all about whether or not these governments will take more steps to try to contain what's happening right now with the coronavirus outbreak.
Anybody who's invested their 401k in the market obviously is going to look at this when they get off of work today. Most people don't follow minute by minute the stock market, but they're going to hear it's down 1,000 points or however it lands. And the inevitable question always is, what should I do as an average investor? Hold tight?
You know, it's kind of funny that you mentioned that because earlier today we sat down with Warren Buffett for 3 hours talking with the billionaire investor about what he thinks about this whole thing. One of the big takeaways that Warren Buffett has over decades of investing, very successfully by the way, is that while the coronavirus outbreak is a bad development for the human race and there's a huge scare with regard to what it could mean, it should not dictate investors' portfolio decisions. So one of the things that a lot of traders and investors are looking at right now is what their risk tolerance is, how much they can afford to lose. This is a scenario right now where even with today's sharp losses, Chris, we are still within 5 to 7% of record highs in the stock market. So if there was a time for you to reconsider your risk tolerance, this might be it. But this is by no means a panic in the marketplace right now. We haven't seen a loss of this variety on this daily scale in about a year and a half. So this is not a normal thing right now. We'll see if it stays that way.
Dom Chu, always appreciate it. Thank you so much. And any minute now, the memorial for Kobe and Gianna Bryant is expected to begin at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. And when it starts, we will bring it to you live. And Senator Bernie Sanders is the Democratic...
And odds are it will level out. It'll level out for a day or two, and then it'll take another plummet. And then there'll be people that'll pull the cream off the top, and then it'll level out again. It does that.
Front runner, right?
That's how the beast runs. But the bottom line is this: the coronavirus is getting worse, not better, but worse.
6th will begin that memorial. Will be brought to you live right here on MSNBC, so stay tuned for that. We want to talk now, as we wait, though, about the race for the White House. And
They're giving Kobe basically the same type of treatment as they have other celebrities like Elvis.
Good morning, and welcome to the celebration of life for Kobe and Gianna Bryant and their friends, John, Carrie, and Alyssa Altabelli, Sarah and Peyton Chester, Christina Mauser, and Ara Zabayan. On behalf of Vanessa and the entire Bryant family, we thank you for your thoughts and prayers during this difficult time and appreciate your love in coming to celebrate the life of these remarkable individuals. While this is a memorial event, the word celebration is very much a part of its purpose. And while we ask you to respect the solemnity of the occasion, we must not forget to celebrate the lives of Kobe, Gianna, and their friends. There is no doubt that he would have wanted that. To begin this event, a very close friend of the Bryant family is here to show her love and support to Vanessa and all the families here today. Please welcome Beyonce Knowles Carter.
kiss me, baby, kiss me. Before they turn the lights out, before they turn the lights out. I'm here because I love Kobe, and this was one of his favorite songs. So I want to start that over, but I want us to do it all together. And I want you to sing it so loud they hear your love. Are y'all ready?